Goedendag, mijn naam is Broes, ik kom uit België en mijn vraag is: van waar komt het geld voor het Europese budget?
The short but not so simple answer is mostly from you, the taxpayer. But as there is no EU tax as such, the question remains open to explanation. The founding fathers of the European Union preferred the community to be financed by a proper tax of its own. In fact, one of the predecessors of the EU, the European Coal and Steel Community, was financed by a real community tax, levied on the steel and coal industry. But despite regular calls for a community tax system to prevail, the EU is now almost entirely funded by contributions from the member states. Part of the EU's revenue is called traditional own resources, or TOR. They are mainly trade tariffs and custom duties gained from third countries. That is the foreign taxpayers' contribution to the EU to this day. Next to that, a very small percentage of VAT collected in the member states is allocated to the budget. But gross national income-based own resources, or GNI for short, is the biggest post by far.
Originally it was composed on contributions, common customs contributions, and then have a VAT contribution. This was the original one. These were not enough. So there is a resource was created that was the one based on the gross national income of the member states. In practice, the direction has been to be more and more a direct contribution by the member states.
Let's take the example of two member countries of similar population size but very different financial muscle. The Netherlands is one of the richest countries of the EU, Romania one of the poorest. GNI contributions represent roughly 1% of gross national income. In the case of the Netherlands, that amounts to just over 4 billion euros in 2010. For Romania, it's 1.1 billion. That means that the Dutch are shouldering about 4% of the entire EU budget, whereas the Romanian contribution amounts to just over 1%. Even though the contribution-based system is hardly transparent for the citizen, perceived unfair imbalances can be addressed by the member states directly in the budget negotiations.
If the budget was financed mainly through a direct tax, then and where let's say the parliament has the power to set this tax, it's much more difficult to actually discuss the excess contributions or not.
Which brings us to the seemingly eternal debate between those member states who pay more into the EU than they get out in funding and those who receive more than they pay in. But that's for another edition of How It Works.